push go live. We are live. All right. Today it is December 11th, and we're doing a live stream. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to CEO Zones. Today's live stream. Why am I down there? Oh, my goodness. I apologize, everyone. We're going to move you over to the right camera. Jeff, you're just used to putting up with Bill, who doesn't know what he's doing, I hope. We'll put that up there. I didn't realize it. Nobody told me. So that's how we go. All right. Welcome to CEO Zones. Today's live stream with Jeff Chatterton, CEO of Checkmate Public Affairs. We'll cover 3 topics and probably some more. A simple test to judge whether your current plan actually works. A clear picture of what you really need in place before the cameras show up. Real-world examples of how smart organizations build readiness that protect their revenue and trust. Jeff, I like the blue shirt, is the CEO of Checkmate Public Affairs. His firm specializes in helping good corporations when bad things happen. And hopefully you get to know Jeff long before a bad thing happens. Welcome, Jeff. How are you today?
It is a good day. It is. We're getting ready for Christmas, whether it's green, white, or some shade in between. Yeah.
All right. So how do we jump into this first topic?
I mean, you came and you said, "Hey, Jeff, I want you to talk about crisis comms," and I think when a lot of people talk about crisis communications, I think what tends to happen is they think about the big, bad, ugly moments in their life, right? And so, and I have a few stories I typically like to start with, but I mean, I fix ugly stories for a living. This is what I do all the time, right?
Can you do something about this?
Everyone has their own version of what an ugly story is. But I mean, the challenge I have is that it's not that I don't have the ugly stories. I have too many ugly stories, right? And so maybe that's a little bit messed up, but I don't honestly, I don't even remember, but I wanted to share with you what I think is absolutely one of my favorite scariest pictures in the world. Let's see if I've got this right. Boom. There we go. I love this photo. I love this photo for 3 reasons. The first, it's important to understand the pilot survived. You can see he's got the parachute going. I think I've told this story before, but the second is because, we kept his call sign, which was Boozer, out of the news, which, for pretty obvious reasons is a cool thing. I will skip the long and the detailed technical analysis of what went wrong. If anyone really wants to know, send me an email. I will walk you through it in detail. The long and the story is he was about 30 feet above the ground, and he started to corkscrew. And he realized that he wasn't going to be able to fly out of this. It was a demonstration of an F-18 fighter jet for an air show. There's no way that they build these things for some of the tricks and the things that he was trying to do.
Right.
It wasn't in the manual. He pulled the ejection handle 9/100ths of a second before master alarm would have gone off in his helmet. If he had waited that extra 10th of a second, he would have died. I love that because it says 2 things. A, it says he had the confidence to pull the plug on a $50 million airplane. B, he had the confidence to pull the plug on a $50 million airplane before the airplane told him it was in trouble. That is amazing to me. That is, to me, that is what this is all about. This is what we do. This is about skills and training and not just relying on the manual. So for years and years and years, and I think anyone who's ever been a leader, a business leader, has been told, oh, you need to have a crisis communications plan. Oh, crisis communications plan. It's one of those fundamental building assets that every organization needs. So I'm going to tell you another story, and it's a story that means a lot to me personally. I got involved with. It's a story I actually tell in my book, Leaders Under Fire. So if you've read it, there you go. You're going to recognize it. It was, if I remember correctly, it was the 15th of August, and I got a phone call at about 9:07 a.m. That Pacific time, just after lunch, my time in the Eastern time zone, because the client was the owner of a specialty aviation company in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, I know that a lot of people don't own hot air balloon companies, but I'm going to ask you to stretch with me here, right? Barry was my company owner. He was a friend of mine. He was a client, but he told me the things that it doesn't matter what kind of business you have. He gave me the 4 words that no one in corporate communications or corporate America ever wants to hear. We just blew up. Unfortunately, Barry wasn't speaking figuratively.
Oh.
Let's see if I can. Let me walk you through this for a minute. Now, imagine if you're Barry. Put yourself in Barry's shoes. You're doing absolutely nothing wrong. You're running a good company. You like your employees like you, your customers love you, you're profitable, you're doing a good thing, the FAA is leaving you alone, and bam, that all explodes. Everything disappears in 1 minute. Everything falls to chaos, right? Wow. You don't know what's happening. Your employees don't know what's going on. The members of the public don't know what's going on, but every single one of them is coming to you. And they're coming to you angry, they're coming to you agitated, they're coming to you upset, and they're coming to you right now. And it's very, very scary. And it gets worse because now you're dealing with that fear and you're dealing with that confusion and you don't know what's happening. And people start to look to you for leadership. And when they come looking to you for leadership, they're looking for answers and they don't ask delicate questions. That is why a crisis sucks. It sucks to talk to reporters who are asking a bunch of questions that you don't know the answers to. It sucks to talk to employees if you don't know what's going on. It sucks to talk to some very intense regulators or investors or members of the board. And frankly, if you haven't been there, you can't know what it's like. No one prepares corporate leaders for what that is like. Now, you may have been one of the 15% of companies that have staged a crisis simulation in the last 18 months, but chances are good because there's only 15% of you out there, you're not. And even if you are one of those 15% and you've done your homework and you're mentally prepared for that crisis situation, I've got bad news for you. You're probably preparing for the wrong type of crisis. No matter what, we can all agree that having a bunch of people yelling and screaming at you for answers is not a good way to spend your day. But that chaos, all that anger, that confusion, the stress and frustration, that's a symptom. The real problem is a company that's hasn't implemented some fundamental shifts in the way they're preparing for these types of crises. I call them 3 basic but essential shifts that will make your organization and your corporate leader reputation bulletproof, even if your hair is on fire. So with that, I want to, the first shift, it's pretty fundamental, but I want you to forget about facts. Facts are one of those scary, dirty things that we just don't process well. So let me explain what I mean. So I do a lot of work, and we've talked in the past, I know, I work with major stadiums and venues, and I've had the sports stadiums for over 20 professional sports teams. And I tell them, if a meteorite comes streaking out of the sky and destroys the West Grandstand, that is a problem. But what if everyone stands around and cheers? You don't have a crisis. You have a massive unplanned renovation, right? You may have some budgeting issues, but that's not a crisis. So the first big shift in understanding is that we're not talking about crisis management. We're talking about crisis communications. And it's only a crisis for your communications if people are upset. And really, it's only a crisis for you if people are upset with you, right? So it's not about the facts. The facts don't matter. You're never going to get in trouble for what happened. You're going to get in trouble for why stuff happened. Go back to my venue. If you're hosting a game and grandpa dies in the men's room, is that a crisis? Well, some people would say yes. Some people would say no. People aren't going to get upset with you for the fact that grandpa died. They are going to get upset if you're responsible for why he died. And see, there's a pretty fundamental shift there. It's not about the what's actually happened. It's what people think and perception. And so what I tell people is, let's rethink what we're thinking when it comes to crisis. So you've been told to prepare for a crisis. It involves a lot of simulation, a lot of expense, a lot of planning, a lot of exercise. You're going to bring in the fire department. You're going to bring in the stuff. They're good. They're great. But they're expensive. They're a huge time investment. They are lost productivity. Let's break this down. Really, our end goal here is to keep people from getting upset. Now, they get upset if there's a threat. It's fear. It's a fear-based psychological response. So the secret is to making sure that you can remove the threat. So what does this mean? It means chances are good, if you do have a crisis communications plan, it is way too prescriptive, because really at the end of the day, there's really only 3 types of crisis, and that's it. First one, fundamental question: are we safe? Is this plane safe? Is this building safe? Is this business practice safe? Is my family safe if I go to your facility? Those are a threat to self crisis. You can have that because there's a fire, there's an earthquake, there's a volcano, there's pedophiles running around in your men's room. I don't know what the issue is. I've seen them all. That is the first fundamental one. And it's where most people default to when it comes to thinking about crisis. Right. The second one is my wallet safe? That can cover everything from, you've got senior leadership that's accused of embezzlement. You've got credit card breaches and privacy breaches. There's all sorts of questions that are going on. Is it safe to sell building supplies to your particular company on credit? Is ultimately is my wallet safe type of problem. And I have been involved where organizations need to convince suppliers that they can work with them. The third one is so pervasive these days, and it's so existential, and it's out there everywhere. Everything from the routine stuff, like my vice president said something that was dumb. The owner of the company did something sexist. You've got corporate jets that are taking off and flying over my house at 3 a.m. And that's not a safety issue, and it's not a wallet issue, but you can be damn sure I'm offended about it. You've got, those are the types of problems that most companies are 100% going to run into. Some of them are fine. Some of them aren't. Some of them, I think what tends to happen when we talk about, name it, a food manufacturing company, you say, let's have a crisis. They're going to talk about, okay, so our plant catches on fire and it sparks a massive recall, and now we've somehow poisoned an elementary school. That's great, but you're far more likely to run into Me Too allegations, accusations of homophobia. Like I said, your vice president gets caught doing something completely stupid. What are you doing about that? How are you showing leadership? And that's where most crisis communication plans, frankly, are completely mute. If they have a crisis communication plan, they're not talking about this sort of stuff. What are they doing, right? So the second big shift I tell folks, toss the binder. Like I said, for decades now, every business owner on earth has been preached to. And frankly, I think it would be annoying, but they have been told about the importance of the crisis communications plan. Frankly, I'm going to let you in on a secret. This is 2025. It's almost 2026. We wouldn't use a Commodore 64 to communicate in today's world, right? The crisis communications plan, that binder that sits on a mid-level manager's desk. Why on earth are we taking something as so critically important as your goodwill and your corporate reputation, and depending on this 1-inch thick plastic ringed binder, which probably, if I'm going to be blunt, hasn't been updated since before COVID. It hasn't. It probably still has fax numbers for the corporate newsrooms. No one's checked the fax machine in 10 years. The media lists are going to be out of date. The scenarios are going to be overly prescriptive. They're not going to be written in the spokesperson's true voice. And in addition to being dated the minute they're written down, in addition to being overly prescriptive, quite frankly, it's useless if it's on fire, Bill.
If it's in the fire, yeah.
The biggest problem, though, with crisis communication plans, the traditional, we spent, a couple weeks and $50,000 and we brought in a consultant and we put together this really robust crisis communications plan. The biggest problem is not all of those things. The biggest problem is that they give you a false sense of security. I feel that oftentimes they're written, they're ignored, and because they're ignored, they're dangerous. And I cannot understand why corporations, again, depend on something so critically important and then don't do the things. I come back to my guy with the jet. Would Boozer be flying jets today if he relied on what the binder said? Right? No, he'd be dead. Relying on a crisis plan without the training, without an external guide. It's like asking your 14-year-old daughter to cook the biggest, most important dinner of your life after only reading something in a recipe book. There's a skill set there. There is a training there. Communicating in a crisis is like serving that dinner on a ship during a hurricane while you have to keep one hand on the wheel, right? You could do it. In theory, 100%. It might happen. But why on earth would you want to take that kind of risk? I mean, that's just not feasible. I mean, I think most people today would look at their own operations and say, we have a dynamic, fast-paced environment. So if your business is dynamic, shouldn't your communications plan be dynamic? You should be able to look at a situation that's presented in front of you and be able to make a call. You should be able to make things and change things on the fly. But how do you do that? We've taken a look at stuff. We thought, man, based on what we're hearing from our clients, based on what our folks like Barry are telling us, they want to be able to pick up the phone and make one phone call and be told exactly what to do step by step. That's the process that we've gone through.
Right.
it sounds simple, but remember, you don't have the time or the resources or the ability to establish a relationship with some crisis counselor who is new to you. And I'm going to give you quite frankly, a lot of my competitors, a lot of my colleagues are going to be pretty upset with this, because when I slay the crisis communications plan angel, that's the primary revenue source. That's the deal. I can hand that client a binder and justify the $50,000 that I spent. I now have a deliverable, right? And it's the wrong type of thinking. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of processes, procedures, written down processes and procedures. But I think it's important to understand that a crisis management plan is not the same thing as a crisis communication plan. If you have a stadium, you can be damn sure you need to know how to evacuate everyone in that facility out into your parking lot in less than 3 minutes. That is a management plan. Now, what I am talking about is, what are you going to say in the wake of those 3 minutes, right? If you're a food manufacturer, you can be absolutely sure you need to have that manual, those plans. You need the recall guidelines. You need to have the contact information for either the FDA, or in Canada, the CFIA. The local regulators at the state level, the local level, the different folks that are out there. The EPA folks, if you have anything coming out of your facility in terms of emissions, you need to have some sort of a relationship and the ability to know exactly what to do when those emissions start to go a little bit sideways. That is not what we are referring to. We're almost exclusively here talking about what are we saying about all of those sorts of things. You need to have the simulations. You need to have the plan. But what I am saying is, do not rely on that same document to help you protect the biggest asset, which is your reputation. It's your image. It's the way people look at you. And again, I come back to that plan, that 1-inch binder that sits on a mid-level manager's desk somewhere. It ticks the box. Someone can say, it's okay, we have a crisis plan. It's not okay. And in fact, you're probably in more danger than you think. Let me give you an example. And I absolutely love this example. I do a lot of work with tourism attractions, theme parks, entertainments, and zoos. Zoos have their own reputation challenges on the best of days, but one of the standard operating practice, and everyone runs it a little bit differently, but if you go to a good world-class facility, call it the San Diego Zoo, chances are good that if you go to the herpetarium, which is the fancy word for where they keep the dangerous snakes, right? They typically, most zoos have the glass wall on one side that says, this is a black mamba, this is what it is, this is where it lives. On the back, on the other side of that hall, they have a hallway, and they have the room that the zookeepers can go into to clean up the snake poop and to make sure that the snake gets fed and all of those sorts of things. And if it's a larger exhibit area, if it's not just like an aquarium box, if it's something that they can walk into, they typically have a few things. So they have I call it a squash door. It's like a little 4-foot mini door, because to get in, they crouch down, they get into to this door. And they'll, on the door, they'll have, Black Mamba 2. That's relevant information, because if you think there's only one and you take a wrong step, that's a bad way to discover that. 2, The brown one is fussy. Okay, that's this is all good info, right? Now, beside the door, they have an emergency button. You've seen them. It's like the big red button that you have to hit. That sets off the alarms. They have a Barca lounger on poles. So basically, you put your butt. The protocol is if you were walking and you didn't pay attention and you happen to get bit by the black mamba, you immediately leave. That's the difference between communicating and managing. Management, you leave, get out, right? And you sit down in the chair and you hit the button, right? Some emergency response team is going to come running down the hallway to figure this out. That you go, ouchie, I've been bitten by a black mamba, right? Right beside the chair is a mini fridge. What's in the mini fridge, Bill?
The antidote.
Antivenin. Here's the problem. Sometimes a guy in Utah decides it's a fun idea to keep rattlesnakes for a pet. And so they'll donate the only available supply of Western timberland rattlesnake venom on the West Coast to go fix this guy in Utah who's an idiot and managed to get bitten by his family pet. Sometimes they run out of antivenin. It's got a short shelf life. Now, but at the same time, you still have to go in and feed the snakes. You still have to go clean up the snake poop. When that happens, they put a big red stop sign on the door. They don't want you thinking that this is fine. Here's the other big one. They take away the mini fridge. They need you to be very clear. There is no antivenin here. If you walk in there, you need to know the risks that you are taking, right? I think that is a big, long, complicated story. But I think, there we go. I think the standard crisis communications plan, the one that we've been using, the one that we've been pitching for the last 50 years, is an empty mini fridge. It's just giving you a false sense of security. There's nothing in that fridge. Wouldn't it make far more sense to have something in the fridge? That is what I have been running around and preaching to corporations left, right, and center. There are better ways of handling all of this. So
it does look like your head would fit right in there.
I know. There we go. Right. I wonder if I could see. This is.
Oh,
yeah, there we go. Right.
Oh, that's worse. Okay. We just lost 2 viewers.
The third big fundamental shift, I get passionate about this stuff, but don't try to do this solo, right? Have a guide. What's the best stock photo I could find of a guide? I found Yoda, right? If you try to do this on your own, what you're doing is basically all you're doing is you're creating the conditions for failure. So, and this is not a pitch. This is not meant to be a sales pitch. I'm just going to tell you what we have done and what we have done with our clients. So we took a look at the crisis plans. We decided we're not going to do this anymore. Yeah, it's good money. It's easy money. And it was controversial because a lot of organizations are told or mandated that they need a crisis communications plan. Some government agencies actually mandate a crisis communications plan. But we feel, and we continue to feel strongly, a crisis communications plan has some merit in different organizations, but in different ways than they think. I was working with a large boat manufacturing company. They had factories in 10 different places. They needed to have the protocols in place. Absolutely. They needed to have backup locations in place. They needed to have designated spokespeople. They needed to have all of those sorts of things. But when it came to the nuts and bolts, what are we going to say when this happens? No, that's not what they need. They don't need a binder. They don't need this spelled out for them. We went through our roster of clients and we said, look, I know you requested a written plan. Here's what we're going to propose instead. So what if we give you a phone number That number is answered 24/7, 365. That person who answers, they know you, they know your industry. They're going to tell you exactly what to say and exactly what to do. And frankly, we're going to do this for like probably 10% of what our written plan is going to cost you. Now, we do make way less money this way, but frankly, it's better results. The clients are happier. They get better value. We feel good knowing that we're doing the right thing. And frankly, we get great business just from word of mouth because other corporate leaders talk and they say, yeah, this is such a smarter way of doing this. My sincere advice to anyone who's watching, find a trusted guide, someone who is external to the company, who isn't emotionally invested and is able to skim above the emotional chaos. Someone who knows crisis, who knows your industry, who knows you and how you think and knows how to think in a crisis, someone you can trust. Find that person, work with that person. I'm going to bring you back to Barry.
Yeah.
So for those who are unfamiliar with this story, this is an actual picture. This is after the fact. This is Hot Air Balloon Company. They were doing a refueling of their canisters. Now, hot air balloons use propane. They use a lot of propane. There was a lot of propane that was stored at this particular facility. What's important here is that that particular facility, in addition to having a massive mushroom-shaped cloud over it, is less than a mile from the Las Vegas Strip.
Oh.
So we did not know if the pilot was alive or dead. We didn't know the status of what was going on, but we did have some really, really relevant information. We knew that there were no passengers involved. If we're doing a refueling, it is long after the passenger's gone. Now, no one else would know that, but we knew that. Obviously, this is going to be an internal corporate process. The other big one that we knew, frankly, if you got to think about this from the perspective of the average viewer, the guy walking down the street, at 9 a.m. on the Las Vegas Strip, probably a little bit hungover, but you look at that much and you think, oh my gosh, Al Qaeda's come to town, right? You have no idea what's going on. So we immediately got out in front of that and started taking media calls from the spark going off in the corner of the pilot's eye to me being the spokesperson, which is not a great environment, but it was the best of multiple bad options, was less than 14 minutes. I was doing live television across Las Vegas in 14 minutes. We didn't have the information, but we did know that no passengers were involved. This was not a terrorist attack. This was an industrial refueling accident. And that emergency officials have absolutely been called and are on the scene. It shuts down rumors. It shuts down innuendo. That's critically important. Nothing beats speed. You have to be out there. We didn't have the info, but we did not let that stop us. I did, and basically my model, we've talked in the other webinars that we've done, here's what we know, here's what we don't know, here's where you can go for more information. That was a classic example of, for more information, give me a call after 6 p.m. or whatever. It was a very fluid situation. I ended up getting on a plane that night, flying down and doing in-person interviews for about the next 2 days as we dealt with what was going on.
So let me stop you there a minute. So your model sounds like it adds more value than a typical firm like yours. And I know this isn't meant to be a sales pitch, but now you got me wondering, right? Because the CEO members and directors, this has to be near the top of their mind, right? So you're different than the other folks, let's say, in the industry. Now I hear you personally get on there and make sure that things are happening because Barry is apparently too busy or whatever it might be, which I can see that. Uh, then you get on an airplane and you go out there for 2 days. So how are you a retainer base? Or are you just, hey, I'm coming and
Yeah,
I'll
he was
build?
one of our very first crisis to other clients. He it was less than $1,000 a month. I'm not going to get into, I mean, it was a small business. It was, not a big concern. He paid travel expenses.
Right.
But other than that, everything was covered. Um,
Sure. Huh.
that's that, we charge a flat rate monthly. Um, God forbid you need to call us. We're going to take that call no matter what. We're going to start giving you good advice and we're going to make the problem go away. Frankly, I tell people we're incentivized to not work, right? Because you don't want us working. You want the problem to disappear. The problem with traditional public relations or marketing firms is that you call them up and you say, hey, I have this problem. People think that, we've had a terrorist attack on our property or we have a food recall. God knows what the problem is.
Right.
Chances are good they're going to assign a junior staffer to the problem. They're going to spend a week putting together the action plan. They're going to charge you up the wazoo because they know they've got you over a barrel. And they're not incentivized to make the problem go away. It's just bad. It's just bad business modeling. So yeah, we prefer to have the relationship with the folks in advance, the smart ones who figure out, you know what, it's not worth the hassle. Let's just make the problems go away before they come up, and so that's how we did it. A week later, Barry managed to get. He had other facilities across North America. He brought in other balloons, other equipment. The pilot was released from the hospital. He had some burns, but not life-threatening burns. He got really lucky, frankly. It was a week later. I remember he was ready to go back to the public on a Friday. I said, can you give me the Friday? Go take your Saturday, but give me the Friday. And so I made some phone calls. We reached out to the people who initially called us to say, hey, you remember us? We had the massive fire less than 5 days ago. And they, yeah, what's going on? Said, you want to go for a ride? So we filled the basket with ABC, CBS, Fox, the Las Vegas Review Journal. And they all went live that morning. Part of the breakfast television.
What a flip, huh?
Wow. Yeah. The Phoenix rising from the ashes story. It was, we calculated it out. It was probably just shy of $200,000 worth of free advertising. We didn't lose a dime in bookings, which is impressive considering you just blew up. But at the end of the day, we didn't give people a reason to worry. It was an industrial refueling accident. It wasn't passenger safety oriented. It was, there was, it's an unfortunate incident, 100%. But we shut down that fear mechanism, and that's really what this is all about. It's a psychological game. And we shut down the fear mechanism. So I tell people, I don't have a slide for this. I tell people, look, obviously get a relationship with someone. It doesn't have to be me. Find someone that you trust. Find someone that you can count on to take that phone call at 3 a.m. on Christmas Day. Find someone that knows crisis communications and knows your business model and the various nuances that are out there, and frankly, someone you can trust with your secrets, because chances are good when you're dealing with the ugly, that the ugly comes with some luggage. Everyone's got the skeletons in the closet. I'm not judging. Everyone has their issues that they need to deal with. So you need someone you really can trust. Internally, you need to have your protocols. Everyone needs to know that we would go to this location. Everyone needs to know that this is who we would go. If in the event of a crisis, these are the people we will have in the room. These are the decision makers. It is shocking to me how many organizations don't have that information identified in advance. If you want some help with that, give me a call. We can walk you through the process that we use and try to figure that out. Sometimes there are some really simple solutions that just need to be thought of. I was working. I know Alexandra on your team is from Kentucky, and I'll tell you, I was working with a major venue in Louisville. And they needed an emergency backup location. There was a major hotel just down the street. We just basically called them up and said, all right, in the event we have a major fire, we need a place to work. In the event you have a major fire, you need a place to work. How about we just have an agreement that we will give you space with internet and phone lines and coffee makers and all that stuff. This is, and they went, that is a great idea. Boom. But people need to know that. So now that you've got the what's looked after, you need the who's. So get someone, and by someone I mean two, because one is, two is one and one is none. Someone trained on how to communicate in a crisis. This is not the same thing as media training. Media training is great at how do we convince people that we're going to promote the newest flavor of peanut butter. It is not good when people are upset and agitated and wondering how come you put a community at risk. You need someone who knows how to answer those questions, what a key message is, how to make a bridging statement, how do you bring that all together. If that person needs to be trained, frankly, they need the freedom to work. I hate, I'll call it out. I hate working with universities. I do, a lot of work with universities that I say, okay, so we need the corporate spokesperson. They need to be able to say, well, no, that needs to go past legal, and then it needs to go past this team, and then it needs to go past this team. I'm like, no, by now the crisis is already over. Right. You need to give and if you need to give them the framework with which they can go public and start communicating, that's okay. But you need to give them the ability to do something. There is no excuse for speed. So get your protocols in place, get your spokespeople identified, get them trained, and give them the freedom to do their job. If you do just that, you will have done more than 70% of all organizations out there. You're going to be in far better shape. If you find that trusted guide, the guide who can come in and say, well, have we talked about this yet? Because if we can do this, we make the whole problem go away. And you go, crap, that makes sense. Why don't we just do that? That's what that's about. True story. I flew out to, I'm not going to identify the city, but it was a 5-hour flight. It was an industrial situation. Man was dead on scene. They were concerned about the Department of Labor. They were concerned about OSHA violations. They were concerned about all of this sort of stuff. I said, come on out. I sat down. I sat down with the general manager of the facility. I sat down with their legal counsel. I looked at their statement. I said, well, wouldn't all of our concerns go away if we just added this word right here? It was literally one word. And the crux of the issue is it was a visiting delivery person who made a mistake and had died. And if we can put a visiting supplier, it changes very dramatically the nature of what it is that we're doing, and the fact that we're not creating a dangerous work environment and we're not doing all of these things. It was someone who wasn't familiar and made his own decisions, and unfortunately paid for those decisions with his life. It was a tragedy, but it wasn't a crisis. We fixed that by adding one word to our statement, and it did. The whole thing just disappeared. The news, rooms, figured that out, and they said, "Well, what do you mean? This is what happened." Oh, yeah, that sucks, but we're going to go talk to his company, or that's fine. That's not my problem anymore, right?
Unless that's other companies, your client.
Yeah, well, yes. That was at 10 in the morning. At noon, I went back to the general manager and went, I'm going to be around for the rest of the day. I know I said I'd be here for the next 3 days. I've cleared my calendar, but he goes, no, you can go home. We're good. Right?
See you later.
I still have to charge you. He goes, yeah, that's fair. But I call it the most expensive one-word statement I've ever issued in my life, but it made the problem disappear. You need that external counsel. You need someone who can look at the big picture and go right there. And they go, oh, it's like when you go to a chiropractor and they go, I bet the problem is right. And you go, oh, yeah. Yes. So
we're about 45 minutes in. And I'm just wondering, I just checked, Jeff. We don't have any audience that has a question. Is there any last statement you'd like to leave us with before we end this beautiful year together?
It has been a genuine pleasure, Bill. You have a passion for your community. You have a calling. You have a gift, and I hope that the rest of your community recognizes that in you. I am honored to have just a small piece of that. And so thank you for that opportunity. When it comes to what I do, again, I'd rather know you in advance than know you after the fact. I'm non-threatening, non-fattening. I don't bite. I'm happy to sit and have a very informal conversation.
All right.
If there's something we can do, I'm gonna share it. If not, that's totally okay. But let's have virtual coffee. Let's just sit down and tell me what's going on with your organization. Maybe it's spokesperson training. Maybe it's getting you into the crisis tether program. Maybe it's just like, do these 3 things and let's touch base again in 6 months and tell me how you're doing. Yeah.
All right. I've flashed that phone number many, many times. Please triple check it. 519-513-1053.
That is me.
Okay. Yep. And for our CEOs that are listening, I would highly suggest you give Jeff a call. As you hear, he has a different business model than many, and he's going to be on the spot for you. I think of, I had a very good friend, not a former friend, a very good friend that made her living, build a large public relations agency, but part of it, because we live in Pennsylvania, the snack capital of the world, all the food companies had to have a binder, and it needed to be at every security depot, at every plant, and every truck that came in, they had to sign a little thing that they read a piece of it, and all of that. So it was a real moneymaker, but I can understand your model and how it just lifts kind of modernizes the process to what you need. So.
And there's nothing wrong with that process from like I said, from a management perspective, from a personnel flow, from understanding who's going to be where and all that sort of stuff. You need those protocols 100%. I just think you can't build your key messages in advance. You can't identify, okay, well, when this happens, we're going to issue a news release that says this. I think that's brutally naive. And we just need to get a little bit faster, a little bit snappier, a little bit more dynamic, and a little bit smarter with how we do that.
All right. Well, I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas. I really appreciate it. And again, on the replays, we usually get a lot more on the replays than we do the live audience, because people watch us on YouTube. We're out there 24/7. So we meet the CEO's schedule when they want to watch it. But look forward. You might see some comments in there, Jeff, at some of your past live streams, and we'll follow up on that. And that is one gorgeous conference room you've got. So that's a beautiful thing.
Is this the part where I can show everything is never what it seems, right?
Well, that was up to you, but I like that. All right, I'm going to push the end here button, and I'll see you backstage, Jeff. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.